Hello, family. This is Bishop John Selders, and I am glad to be coming to you in this most familiar space and place to do what it is that we do in part, and that's keep people informed and keep the conversation hot. And I'd like to believe we have some relevancy in these hot topics and conversations. We are on the case and on the line doing what it is that we do here in CT, but not only in CT. We believe what we do here in Connecticut it has something to do with what is happening in the United States, around this country, and across the globe. We have people who are paying attention to us from faraway places and from right around the corner. I'm happy and thankful and to God for this opportunity. I want to bring just directly into the platform my brother and colleague down in the Waterbury area, in Waterbury, Connecticut, and want to talk a little bit about what has been going on down there and what we've been paying attention to, and get some updates. We talked a little bit about what was going on early on this year, and want to get kind of an update from my brother. He is the pastor of the Long Hill Bible Church in Waterbury. You got to drive up a long road up the hill there to get to his spot. But he and that congregation there have been holding the line and doing the work, I believe, that is called for in these days. Come on, brother, join us and greet our brothers and sisters and folk on these platforms. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing well. Certainly grateful and thankful to be in this space once again with the bishop to chop it up and talk about things that matter, as it relates to our community, our people. So certainly it is a pleasure always to learn from you, to chop it up with you. And so just grateful to be here today.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I'm following your lead tonight. Normally I'm on the other side, but tonight I'm following your lead.
That's right. So I first of all, let me just say it has been my pleasure, and it's been a real joy over these years to be in relationship with you. And we've come through a couple of these little I'm gonna call them dust ups. Let's call them dust ups. And we've been out there. There are a number of us. I'm gonna go. Let me do it this way. The books say, many are called, but few are chosen. That's my text tonight. If I was going to deliver the message, it would be somewhere around there. Many are called, but few are chosen. In this work, there are numbers of people who would say, "Hey, Bishop, I'm with you, bro. What you're doing is great work. In particular, leaning into our faith and what our faith has to say about the justices or injustices that are being perpetrated in our cities and in our towns and in our communities." And I'm with you, Bishop. But then just to say that with one's mouth is one thing. And let me be very clear. I'm glad to have the verbal support and the love and the regard of folk who say, we notice what you do, what you stand for, and we down with you. We rock with you. But there's yet another thing for those to do the next thing, which is not only say with your mouth, but presence with your body. And presence with what you are willing to do in relationship to what you see and what you are able to and wanting to and willing to acknowledge with your mouth. And you've been one of those who've been willing to not only say something but show up and do something. And I appreciate the opportunity we've had over the years to do that. We started talking about an issue that came up. You and I and a few others of us were alerted to a police-involved incident in Waterbury. Could you talk a little bit about that incident that leads us into this, what I'm calling the Waterbury update?
Absolutely. So just to recap, it's been over a couple months now. A video came out showing the Waterbury police officers using some force on a particular suspect. It just didn't really sit with some of us. And even though the Waterbury Police Department had, made some statements on it, even called for a so-called quote unquote community meeting, where I'm hearing there were more police than there were community members per se. Some of us, after watching that, we wanted to have a more in-depth conversation with the Waterbury Police Department. And so those of us who are around the state, not just local Waterbury people, it didn't sit right with us. And so we felt like a greater explanation was needed, greater conversation was needed, beyond just simply kumbaya, trying to get to a place of kumbaya. And so we basically approached the Waterbury Police Department about having a conversation. We also requested some information via the FOI, Freedom of Information Act, requesting certain information as it relates to certain things. We had scheduled a meeting which was supposed to be scheduled for tomorrow. And to your earlier point, a lot of conversation around open door, around our willingness to meet, our willingness to talk. But we had certain stipulations. We didn't want it to be a full community meeting, and we thought it was very important that we would receive the information so that we can have a legitimate conversation where we would be clear about what we're actually looking at, what we're actually seeing, and not just going into a meeting under the premise of, as I said earlier, just trying to get to a place of kumbaya, but really having a thorough conversation around why we thought this issue was troublesome as it relates to us, right?
Hang on just for a second. Let's just pause just for a moment. So that we don't want to take the folk too fast. There was a police involved incident that had gotten videotaped, right?
Yes.
And a tape, this videotape. Now I'm old school, so I'm gonna call it a tape, but the footage, right, was dropped virally,
Yes.
right? So what we saw is it what appeared to be a man of color getting towed up from the floor up by some police, not some law enforcement folk, and it appeared that it was in a recognizable neighborhood. It was alleged to be recent, so this all of the who and what was taken care of. I mean, this we wasn't just up there. Was the upset and wasn't about something that was old or something that wasn't from Waterbury. This was a recent police involved incident where allegedly a person of color and police were involved, and there was it was a beat down. Let me just say it the way I know how to say it: a beat down. And when several of us and members of the Waterbury community and others of us, in this climate, let's just in this, we're not talking about other times. We're talking about right now, when questions were asked before we could even form a question. Quite frankly, a community meeting was called together, and it seemed to be a whole machine was in operation, right? Where there was press releases and things, and a meeting was pulled together, and several community leaders were asked to host a meeting, and they were up front with this. And before those of us who've kind of been in the vanguard and the forefront of some of this work, were able even to get our heads around what did I just see, what's going on here, and does anybody have any information about it? Before that all could happen, there was a meeting called. Things went forward, and here we are. We then, a number of us gathered ourselves together to say, okay, let's slow down. Before we get out there making statements and carrying on, let's have a conversation. Let's invite the mayor, who is the chief executive officer of the city, along with the chief, and a couple of us, and let's with the information. All right, we can FOIA. The Freedom of Information Act allows us the ability to ask for that which is public information to be sent to us, so that we could at least review it ourselves and then come and ask legit questions about in this environment and in this context. And then right now, this again, not talking about what happened back in the day. We're talking about right now. We're talking about right this moment. And okay, so I just wanted to make sure we slow down a little bit, and just say we're not talking about yesterday. We're not talking about last decade, 2 decades, 10 decades ago. We're talking about what happened just recently in this moment. And okay, now I think we done set the stage. We asked for a meeting.
Yeah, because listen, at the end of the day, clarity, right? Clarity, a purpose, because from our perspective, we believe that the police holds the higher responsibility. Those who are doing what they're doing, at the end of the day, it is the police who holds the higher responsibility. And so from our perspective, regardless to what you said in the after fact, as it relates to what you thought the person had on them, this, that, or the third, the police have the higher level of accountability, right? And so that brought pause to us. And again, we just wanted to have a conversation around those facts but we wanted to be informed. And so thus in lies the FOI request, right? And so after a little bit of back and forth, we had settled on a meeting date, which was scheduled to happen tomorrow, but with the caveat saying that we would not proceed forward without having an opportunity to review those requests prior to the meeting. So again, we didn't just want to go into a meeting without the information that we requested. At a minimum, having a couple days to actually look over the requests so that we can go into the meeting being informed, right? So that we would be informed. Obviously, they should be informed, and then we can have a meaningful conversation. Because from my perspective, without us receiving that information, there was no way that we could really have a meaningful conversation that would lead anywhere, right? Um, and so we put that request in upwards 5 weeks ago. 5 weeks ago, and certainly we understand how this goes as it relates to the FOI request. It can be cumbersome, um, but certainly we didn't think that it would take 5 weeks to get the information. And we had set a deadline of last Friday that if we did not receive the information, well, we would be able to have access to it prior to the meeting, that we would have to reschedule, that we would in fact reschedule, that we did not want to meet. We didn't want to meet with a whole bunch of community members. We didn't want to meet with a whole bunch of politicians. We wanted to meet with the leadership of the Waterbury Police Department. Bottom line, that was kind of our criteria, and we wanted to have access to the information. So again, so that we would be informed, they would be informed, and then we would, from that point, be able to have a meaningful conversation around policing and other matters as it relates to the use of force in Waterbury. That's really what it was. And so leading up to Friday, we had not received it. Saturday morning, we hadn't received it. So, we decided to cancel the meeting. We hadn't had the information. Saturday morning, I actually looked, or I can't remember, Friday and Saturday morning, whatever. Happened to look at my email and I saw in my spam that, it had been dropped, that okay, it has been released to a certain extent in my inbox, after hours kind of thing. And that if we wanted to get access to the information, we would only be able to get access to the information by showing up on the date of the scheduled meeting, which was tomorrow, this Tuesday, and making copies. And so from our perspective, that wasn't realistic. That wasn't adequate. And to be quite honest, it was kind of troublesome, right? Kind of troublesome. And not only that, but then at a cost, at a cost, an astronomical cost from my perspective. That if we wanted to make copies, get copies, it would be upwards around $1,200. That just seemed to be a ridiculous, number from our perspective. And so that's kind of where we are right now. We're talking through our next steps in terms of the process as we go forward. We do plan on accessing the information. From this point, we're trying to figure out how we go forward.
So let's be clear once more and again that we asked for a meeting, and we asked in that meeting, before that meeting were to take place, that we would get the information, the documents, if there was an arrest, or what's the report from the officers, and the regular standard stuff. This is not, if there was videotape, if there was some whatever official record, that is public record, by the way. And can I just say one more again? Public record. That law enforcement work for the communities that they're, quote, allegedly to protect and serve. And so it is that is due to anybody, in a formal request. We made written formal request via the Freedom of Information Act 5 weeks prior. along with the setting of a date. And we said, listen, y'all, in order for us to be informed, at least have, we don't know officers' names. I mean, just kind of basic stuff. Not asking deep questions yet. Not yet, but and also not wanting just to jump to any kind of conclusion. But let me just say this right here. If you were to see the video that was sent to us, it was alarming that in 2023, a black man, or let me just say this, allegedly a person of color, would have been beat like we saw on that video. I would have thought we were in another time and era. And when those of us who wanted to at least ask questions about it and hear, some explanation of the use of the kind of force we saw, I'm more than disappointed that the establishment leadership, the elected leadership, that's the mayor, and then that was appointed by the mayor and the elected leadership of the town of Waterbury would take this tack and be just, I don't want to say too much, but I also feel like, to ask what I think is a simple ask. Could you just give us the information that you got, at least some public record, all right, that we are reasonable enough to at least receive it, review it, and then have questions about it. And that request, you would 11th hour us, all after hours, and then put a price tag on it. That I said to you, Pastor, that had it been $100, some copying cost or whatever. Okay, not asking you to eat that. We could have worked that out. But to ask for $1,200 some odd dollars in order for us to ask questions and be informed and not just take your word for it, because we are citizens who live, work, and are accountable to folk within the community. I think it's a bit much, and we wanted to make sure we update folk, you all who are here, who pay attention to some of what we do, to say this is the kind of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, right? That you're not privy to. We understand that there was a meeting that was held in Waterbury. You've characterized it as there were more police there than there were actually citizens. And can I say this, and you all don't get real mad at me? This is such the old playbook. This ain't even the new playbook. This is some kind of old. This is how you treat folk, that you don't care nothing about. It seems to me that there's a kind of disrespectfulness, and I don't want to. I'm doing my best, Pastor, not to blow the spot up.
Yeah,
I'm doing my best to speak in lower, softer tones, and to be reasonable. This here we are, and to say of me, you, and some of us around here that we're known for showing up in these kinds of instances. So we're known personalities and people of interest. It would be cool. It would be well. Wouldn't it not, that if there's some issue around police accountability and police brutality, that Moral Monday CT and Bishop Selders and Pastor Rodney Wade and a few others of us might come around and be asking questions. And I certainly, it wouldn't be my business if it weren't for others who said, Bishop, have you seen this? Yeah. And what do you think we ought to do about it? And that's how we come to it. And I feel very much like folk like Dr. King, who showed up in Birmingham, and the question was asked, why are you here?
Yes.
Why are you here? And he said, listen, I could not sit over in Atlanta. First of all, I used to pastor just down the street. So let me just say that right there. Since you asked, since you want to talk on it, I used to pastor down the street, right? And now I'm in Atlanta, but I'm just a couple hours away. And why wouldn't I, when my friends call and say, Reverend, can you help us out? Doc, can you, what you think about what it is that we're doing? And when I say, listen, this ain't right, or I have some questions that could be answered, that we ought to be able to come around the table and talk about it for a minute. I think it is ridiculous to think that we can't have conversations and meaningful conversations about what I think are questions to be asked. Well, why? I don't think anybody, whatever they have done, ought to be treated in the dehumanizing manner that at least what I witnessed on that video. I think there ought to be. I think it's a shame, and more than a shame. It's not right to beat down on a person in the way that I saw in the video that I did see.
Yeah.
And I want to know, what did he do that warranted that?
Yeah. No, and I think also it's also a larger question, right? So not only that incident, we're trying to take a larger view and saying, okay, what other incidents have taken place that may have not been videotaped, right? So what is the history in the last 6 months, if you will, 3 to 6 months, in terms of the reporting? So those are some of the things that we were looking for. So again, at the end of the day, you can't really come to a understanding of a certain thing without all of the information, right? So again, our perspective is that the police departments have a greater level of accountability in these instances. And if we're requesting the information, which is our lawful right, public record, then we should be able to have access to that information in a timely manner. Matter of fact, that's one of the things that's going on throughout all of these cities. Whether you look at Bridgeport, there was just an article that came out around FOI request and how a lot of these cities have bogged down the process in such a way that this information is not getting released in timely fashion, right? We saw a big article about what was going on in Bridgeport as it relates to this. And so as we sit here putting in requests, for this particular situation, we run into the same thing. And so where we sit is, to your point, we didn't just want to go in and be hollering. We know what our eyes saw, but on the same token, we want to make sure that people are taking the right tack when these situations occur, when these situations happen. And again, we want to be informed not only about this particular incident, but also within the construct of historically. Is this a one-off, or is this something that is going on that maybe a camera didn't catch? You understand what I'm saying? And so that's kind of where we sit. And if there's nothing, then there's nothing. We all pack our bags and we go home. You know what I mean? But to simply think that after a incident like this, that we just want to kind of come and have a smooth and over conversation, I don't think that's an honest approach. You know what I mean? I don't think that's an honest approach. I think you have to have real conversations around these particular incidents, and you can't do that without one-sided information coming out. Because at the end of the day, at that community meeting, they could have released whatever it is that they wanted to release in that moment. But we wanted to see the public record around it, which is in fact our right.
That's right.
And so, when you're doing this type of work, a lot of people don't, there's levels to this. There's levels to this, right? It's not just the chanting outside. even though, that those are, that's a tool and everything like that. But then there's also a process in terms of how we approach and how we deal um, to actually get the information that we need so that we can see the meaningful changes that we need in our community. And I think that's the approach that we're taking.
And shouldn't it be that in our individual communities and in our collective community, let me just both should it be where we live at and where you live at, right? That we be able to ask questions about whatever it is that we need to, as it relates to those who are authorized authority, who we give the social contract that we sign that says for those who have a gun, who are authorized authority in our communities, they have wide berths to provide service, protection, right? And when they don't, or when it looks like it's a little different, shouldn't it be like in every other community across this country? You can ask questions and say, this is not what this doesn't represent or reflect the kind of service I want to see in my community. I don't want this to continue to repeat over and over and over again. And let me just be very transparent and honest. This ain't like this is a one-off. All right, this ain't no one-off. This happens over and over again. I'd be doggone if you're gonna tell me if they caught this one on camera, there are 5, 10 others that happened that same period of time that we didn't see. I want to not think that way, but the history tells us that that's what happens. And it's only when those of us who get sick and tired. Fannie Lou Hamer said, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired." And I want to raise up that aren't you too tired of every time we turn around, we got one of these that happens? It's a beating here, it's a shooting here, it's a killing there, it's an assassination there. And when the community, community will blow up for 5 minutes, we'll have a little bit of dust up, and then those, the powers that be and others, just they wait us out. They wait us out. And I think in this case, what we wanted to do, and certainly being supportive of you, Pastor, and the folk there in Waterbury, in this case, let's don't just, we could have called it, a little dust up back, right? We could have joined in on the stuff. We've done that before in Waterbury, and that I ain't scared of going to Waterbury, right? Ain't nobody scared to be in Waterbury. But what we wanted to do was say, okay, let's come to a little bit of a table. Let's have a conversation. I want to hear what you all say. We're going to say some things back to you about what it is that we're just tired of seeing every time you turn around. And then let's be grown folk and responsible citizens in a space and place, and look at what the law says and what the liberties say. And can we forge a new way of doing and being when it comes to authorized authority in our communities, and not have the same tropes that are used, which amount to, well, he was a bad guy, right? Oh yeah, he was doing something wrong. Well, okay, but everybody that does something wrong is deserving of a beat down.
Yeah.
Don't we have a process? Don't we have a way in which, when somebody is caught with their hand in the cookie jar, that there is a process and a system? And I think I heard you everybody's innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, I would agree. I think for all of us, right? For all of us, not only across this state, but across this country, We're tired of seeing that, and we're tired of the approach, because it seems, no matter where you see it at, the approach to these particular things are the same. You can talk one thing, open door, or we're community minded, but I'm not for sure if that applies in a lot of communities that look like us. You know what I mean? Because we constantly, see this played out. I was having a conversation with someone the other day. We're at the point where other folk can't define our hope for us. You know what I mean? Because our hope is different. Our hope is different. What you may consider to be hope for to you is distressing to us. You understand what I'm saying? Especially in light of the fact, if we've seen it over and over and over again. I'll give you a case in point. We've seen our elected officials come to us time and time again talking about what they gonna do. You follow what I'm saying? That doesn't bring about hope in our hearts. You know what I mean? That's a signal they ain't about to do ish. You understand what I'm saying? So that is not hope to us. That may be hope in other communities. Likewise, in these situations, when we think about, our, folk who are called to protect and serve, certain things in other communities might signal hope, but for us, it's like, whoa, wait a minute, we've seen this movie, play out over and over and over, and we got questions, and now, because we understand how to adequately approach these situations and use the tools that have been made available to us, we can no longer be hoodwinked, bamboozled. You understand what I'm saying? And so, so there's this level of anger. There's this level of frustration that happens because, hey, we're here. This is our right. We want to get this information. Why don't we have it? You understand what I'm saying? And I think that's where we are, right? I think that's where we are, and walking out the process, understanding the process, but at the end of the day, saying, listen, no, just a simple, this notion of that's not what you saw. That no longer works. You know what I mean? Trying to convince us that we don't understand what our eyes show. That is no longer an adequate response. To your point, he was a bad guy, mugshot in the newspaper and on the television screen. No, that is no longer acceptable, because in different environments we see smiling faces, groom haircuts. You understand what I'm saying? Notions of, oh, he's just a troubled child, misunderstood individual. You understand what I'm saying? We need to get, we need to help him to reform or help her to reform their lives. But the narratives that come out in our community is, he was a bad guy, he's a criminal, was this, that, and the third. And so certainly what we're saying is, those things are no longer acceptable in terms of trying to cause us to believe that we ain't seeing what we see from that standpoint.
Yeah, the mischaracterization of who Black men are, or men of color, when we're in our neighborhoods and in urban settings across this state and this country, quite frankly, and that holds true. So that the benefit of the doubt, whatever the case is, I'm not here to argue one way or the other. I don't know what happened. Yeah. What I do know is what I saw on the video, and I don't care what they could have done. They didn't deserve the beatdown that I just saw. It went beyond. Let's render them, not a threat. Mm-hmm. And then let's get them corralled, yes. And then let's get them down to the the jailhouse, and then let's ask some questions, right? That's what you do. You know, somebody caught with their hand in the cookie jar, you know, you want to ask a couple of questions. Well, why your hand in the jar? You know, and even even Big Mama wouldn't just go to beating without some conversation. I mean, at least let me just talk. Let me just say right here, I'm talking about around my people, all right, around, you know, my Big Mama and them. They didn't just go, you know, they didn't start tearing folk up, young people up without some conversation. And when you got my mama right on it, you know, I'd have to do a couple of times. And then she'd get me for old and new, and she'd talk on it all the way through. It'd be a conversation while she tearing me up, right? and what I'm seeing in these particular cases, kind of an old trope that is used. We always do the right thing. No, y'all don't. No, you don't. You know, no, you don't. Yeah, you know, trust us. We'll handle it. No, I can't trust y'all because y'all do stuff and y'all never answer the question. We here some time ago, we just asked the question: how much of this militarized weaponry do you have access to in Hartford and in Waterbury? And in Bridgeport, and in New Haven, and New London? Crickets. The question has never gone answered. How much did y'all spend in all the surveillance equipment that now occupies our cities and towns? When you ask that question, you can't get answers to that. Where are the cameras?
Yeah.
And what do you do with that information? How is it being used? Where is the transparency around any of it? Now, and I'm not trying to be irresponsible. I'm not trying to be unreasonable. I understand that there may be active cases that you need information. You can't say everything, but can you talk in general? What do you use this stuff for?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is the question. There are other questions not that are akin to, but not necessarily directly related to what we saw in this one particular incident. There are questions that I think as citizens in our particular towns and cities and let me say it this way. In some towns and cities, those questions get answered. Yeah. In other towns and cities, those questions lay dormant and never get a straight answer.
Yeah. And you know, and it's true. I mean, you know, there is no argument. You cannot make an argument around that. I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, we've seen too many cases of this in our own neck of the woods around the country. And so from our perspective, those of us who kind of care about this, because one might say that person was a bad guy, but what happens when that person wasn't a bad guy? Right? Wasn't a bad guy. And so the real question for us is, are you training folk to do that kind of stuff? You know, are you condoning that type of stuff? And I'll use something case in point, just from the standpoint of optics. This is not a question of right or wrong or procedurally, just a question of optics, right? You and me, those of us who are concerned about this, we saw the video. We saw what the officer did to this black man. Then there's another video that comes out of Waterbury. There is a police officer. He has been tasked with being a traffic guy. Accident, light went out on the street or whatever it was, right? He's standing there. He's trying to do his job. Lady burst through the area, didn't take his signal. He chases her down, Caucasian lady. He chases her down. He's screaming and hollering. No force. He's just screaming and hollering at her. You know, give me your information. little bit of vulgar words and all of this stuff. She's like, I didn't mean it. I don't. He gets fired. This officer over here who administers punishment, you know what I mean? We hear, oh, he was justified. You understand what I'm saying? So just from the optics, it creates a problem. It creates a problem. As I was saying on my show, you picking up what I'm putting down?
Yeah, you know I'm picking it up. And when you ask the questions, this over here and then over here, this looks like this looks like that. Could y'all explain that? Explain it. Talk to us and make it make some kind of sense. I mean, again, in the, can we just be reasonable? And I'm saying that
let me say this. He was fired for actions unbecoming an officer. You understand what I'm saying? She literally ran through the light. He chases her down on foot, and he's literally just screaming at her, hollering at her, cussing at her, whatever, this, that, and the third. But no physical abuse. No physical, and he's fired. I'm becoming an officer. We don't operate like that.
Yeah, this is a white woman now. This is a white woman now. So so again, I just have to say that I've lived long enough to have seen this movie a whole lot of times before.
Yeah.
And at a point, there are some movies. Now, let me just say this too. There's some movies that I like. I know they bubblegum movies.
Wait, let me interrupt you because I just thought of something. She ran through the light. She ran through his signals to stop. This and the third. Was she not a criminal? Did she not break the law? Did she not obey a direct order from the officer? You understand what I'm saying? So for me, it's not a question, right, wrong, whatever. We can spend on it. Just the optics. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Like I was saying, this
look. Now you done got me pissed off.
And we again, there's some movies I like because I like this is my kind of movie, right? This is my kind of movie. I sit with this kind of movie all the time. These are my kind of movies, and I know they're a little Pollyanny, and I know Hallmark movies have a certain formula, and you don't know me well enough yet, but I likes the movies. I talks at the movies. And I'm gonna figure out what's going. Yeah, she did it, right? That's the one that did it. I'm that guy at the theater who talk. Girl, you're gonna get caught because you're running in them heels. There you go. You know they gonna get you in them heels. I don't know why the whole house doesn't say get out, and you gonna stay. That. Yeah, that's me. I'm that one, and I'm probably a little embarrassing, and I know that's me. But there are some kind of movies I enjoy because that's my cup of tea. These movies, though, I'm tired of seeing these movies, and you can see them coming. When they start slow walking. Or better yet, when they don't talk to you, but they're talking to your colleagues down the street that don't never ask no questions. They are always the ones that are smiling and grinning and getting the Kodak moment. I'm gonna call it tonight. I'm just, and I get my own share of Kodak moments, but I can trust me or not. You don't have to trust me at all. I ain't gonna even ask you to trust me. Just know that I'm asking the questions that they don't really want you to ask. And or I'm coming on places, my show and other places, and I'm asking those questions out loud in public. Because these are the United States of America. Y'all like to claim it in one sense. But as a citizen in this country, I get to ask the questions and get to ask questions of officials that we vote for. They call it accountability. And that's what we're looking for in this moment. We want to, could there be one statement of accountability? You fire the one officer because that's just actions unbecoming of anybody we want on the force. And yet you have a beat down of another. It speaks a little bit of who you value and what you value, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's seen. I mean, like I said, it's seen. It's the optics, right? The optics, and I think, like I said, as we go forward, those of us are understanding that we can't stay silent in our own silos. In other words, this Hartford business, so stay over there. This Waterbury business, so stay over there. This is New London business, so stay over there. This is Bridgeport business, who stay over there. We're understanding that our greatest asset is our connectiveness, our willingness to work with one another, to rectify, or to come to some clear, concrete answers, no matter where these situations take place. And I think that's what we're lending our voice and our support in this moment. We all, as you said, Bishop, are saying, hey, we are sick and tired of these things happening in our state. So no longer can you say this is our city. Let the folk in our city worry about what happens in our city. No, because what happens in your city affects what happens in my city. Truth be told, you understand what I'm saying? Because we've had this conversation before, because they talking. You know what I mean? Don't think the police chief ain't talking to the Hartford police chief.
Listen,
they talk. Why can't we talk?
That's right. Listen, I lived this one right here. So we did a little thing down there a few years ago down in Waterbury, and a little birdie told me the chief and the folk down there in Waterbury called up here to Hartford. Bishop Selders and them coming down here. How do y'all deal with them? He said, it was the question. That was the question. The question on the table was, how do y'all deal with them? They recognize something about what we brought, and the folk that we roll with. So it is in that same way. Here we are. Today we're gonna ask some questions, and this is not the time now in these moments moving forward for us to shrink back and not to be very, very proactive. I hear the blood of our ancestors speaking, who took some of these hits so that we could be in a space and be in the place to say, now, I don't know what happened, but that don't feel right and look right and smell right. Something that don't sound right, what you saying. And can you add more to it? Can you qualify? Can you say more? I mean, when folks start talking and then they finish talking and you still don't know what they said, then you ask clarifying questions. You go on down the line. Could you say more? Could you explain more? And right now, part of why we are here to do what this update is to say we are not living spaces and places where we can't ask, pertinent questions about why, who, what, why, when, how, and what time was it. Make the sense, make some things connect, so that there are reasonable answers, I believe. And here's the other thing that you never get. You never get. When the last time you heard the police said they was wrong and they made a mistake? When the last time you heard a public official go right down the line and say, listen, folks, yeah, after checking on it, I wasn't there, but after checking on it, it's my responsibility as the chief executive officer of this department, or it's my responsibility as the chief executive officer of this state to say something went down and it should not have happened to any citizen of this community and this city. And we not only do we apologize, family, reach out to me. Our people that I'm sure have already been in touch with you. We need to talk about how we make it right.
Yeah.
That don't never come forward.
Absolutely. And I would concur. I would agree. I think we're at a space in our world where we're simply saying we're going to exercise the rights that have been given to us in a real concrete way, right? And we're going to push forward in that, right? Our faithful leaders, but understand there's something, that Reverend Josh said to us at our preach-in, that Moral Monday put together, which was phenomenal, but it's been sticking with me since he said it. And I've been sharing it in my spaces because I've been wrestling with it. This whole notion of this balance between our humility and our rage, right? And that they rely on us, specifically folk who carry this Bible, walk around with this Bible, and at times have this collar on. They rely on us operating in our humility, because operating in our humility all the time, if you will, allows them to tell us no to policy, allows them to feel comfortable not responding in a timely manner, if you will, to our requests. But we have to get to the place where we understand, there is a righteous, how do I want to say it? we have a level of righteous indignation. That's the term I want to use, that we are allowed to exercise. And we see Jesus exercising that when he goes into the temple and he turns over the tables, because he says, what I see here should not be so. And it did not cause him to want to have tea and crumpets, but he turned over some tables and said, this ain't right. He had righteous indignation. And so I think in our spaces too often, specifically in the last 20 or so years, they're used to us showing up in our humility when we need to be showing up in our righteous indignation, saying that this should not be so.
Yes,
and I
sir.
think that's where we are.
Yes, sir. Yeah, our brother messed me up a little bit too with that. And let me tell you, anytime I hear this term, courage, I'd read it in the English, core and rage.
Yeah.
I see in the word courage is rage.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me, the word etymology of that, and I did a little study on it a little bit ago. That the word etymology really has something to do with the heart. It comes from a couple of different terms, but it's the emotion as at the seat of emotions. That it's that feeling that's coming from the inside that comes outside. That even though you might be concerned and maybe even afraid, there might be some concern for bodily harm or safety, that you're then willing to take on the additional, whatever that is, and mount an effort instead of or in the face of that to do or say or be. All right, courage. And for the life of me, brother, it is how do I help others who see what it is? They see the wrong. They've lived it year after year after year, decade after decade after decade. Courage, not just to say in the back when don't nobody see you, That a boy. I get a lot of that now, and again, I'm all right with that. That's okay.
Yes.
But every now and then, can't you just show up and be on the line and say, "Go ahead on and tell it, Bishop." I'm all right. I'll say what I see. Right. I'm good with that. And I'm willing to organize and do the work, one on one, day after day, to say to folk, don't you see? If enough of us say, no, this ain't how we want it to be. This our cities are run out. That thing didn't just drop out of heaven. They put that together. They got a whole strategy on how they want to deal with us, right? And I don't think it's right that they deal with us in the context of an occupying force in our communities. And they beat and they bludgeon and they use brutality and brute force in ways that only keep us from asking questions and really are there to corral us and control us, right? And if you go back to the origins of the police, all right, they come, our sister Michelle Alexander in her book, The New Jim Crow, outlines that thoroughly. That really the notion of policing as we understand it come out of those bands of people who were authorized and paid for by those enslavers to say, go get my property back. Right? That's where the notion of idea and the behaviors that police are now exhibiting. And here we are hundreds of years later, 100 years after the end of the system of enslavement. We're 100 and some years later now. And we still here. Here we are. It just got redone. And we got people who don't have the chutzpah, haven't tapped into whatever that is, to say, listen, okay, I'm just me. But I don't have to live like this no more. Right? We don't have to live like this. Go down there and get you a cell phone. You ain't got to be tied to the landline no more. Go on down there and they got it now. You can pay as you go. They done made it easy for you now. You go down there and get you one, them phones, and pay as you go and join the 21st century. If we're hacking that, right? If we're saying now, can't we just vote? And can't we vote early? We one of 4 states that can't even we can't even vote early no more. 4 states, Mississippi, Alabama, New Hampshire, and us. Right? We're doing that kind of work. We got to say, okay, I'm not going to be here on voting day, so I have to have an excuse in order to get an absentee ballot. What? I mean, that's on the books. Come on, let's come on in the 21st century. If we are saying that as it relates to what I'm calling the voting rights, and this is legislation that's up before our state General Assembly right now. What I'm talking about is right now. If that's the case, can we in the same way, say in our community, say in Hartford, say in Waterbury, say in New London and New Haven and Bridgeport and other towns across this state, listen, y'all just can't just run amok and act the way you act and act the way you've been acting without some of us, once we hear about it, asking some questions about it.
Absolutely. I mean, you covered that right there in that moment. And that's, I guess that's what I'm trying to articulate. That's the critical piece, recognizing that these silos that we have created, they have been more of a detriment to us than a positive for us, because we're seeing it happening in all of our cities. And so at the end of the day, if we don't in fact join our voices, if we don't in fact share our solutions and our problems and our circumstances one with another, and then as Abraham said a lot, if you ever need anything, I'll be there for you. You understand what I'm saying? This whole type of notion of isolation, because here's the thing. This is how I see God. I believe that God never intended for us to operate in isolation. that God is raising up a people, not just a person. You understand what I'm saying? A collective voice, right? That would populate this earth with his message, right? And that comes in various means and various ways. But nevertheless, he's calling for a people. And at some point, you and I, who and others who are wrestling with these issues in our various cities, even around the country, we're going to have to understand, man, listen, God has called us to raise up collective voices and stop operating in silos that would suggest, oh, well, it didn't happen over here to me, so I'm good. Failing to realize, it very well could, right? And at that moment, you're going to be looking for others to stand with you, to support you, to help you in your fight to bring about justice. And so why don't we just get started on that now instead of waiting for an incident, that we would always be in a place of understanding that our stories are intertwined, interconnected. Our experiences are shared across the board. But now we must figure out a plan and a strategy, as you spoke about earlier, on how we start to speak to those things in a collective voice, whether it's around the Voting Act, whether it's around the so-called spending cap in the state of Connecticut that limits resources to life-saving services that folk need in the state. It just trickles all the way down because certain people who are so-called leaders are talking about, people are going to have to learn how to manage stuff. And I asked the question, how can you speak about managing when you've never had to do that, when you don't even know what lack is, and then you want to educate us on, you're going to have to decide on what's more important than the other thing. Is it voting rights? Is it life-saving services? Is it long-term care workers? How are you going to tell folk who have been struggling and you don't even know what struggling is, how to manage? Because you've never had to deal with that struggle, right? And so I think as we begin to speak about all of these particular issues, that's the challenge that we face. How do we bring our collective voices in spaces that may not necessarily be our space? So I'm so grateful and thankful that in this moment that you, Bishop, and others around the state saw that and said to me and others, hey, how can we help? How can we help to bring about a change in your city? You understand what I'm saying? And so I'm so grateful.
Well, we way past our time. It's always good, brother, when we come together and talk about what I think are are the real issues.
Yeah.
I can get on the soapbox just like anybody and everybody else and talk about highfalutin and be all up in the stratosphere and the ionosphere. Here's where the rubber meets the road in our particular cities and in our particular towns as we live from day to day. The hard, real hard work of from day to day trying to survive, trying to keep food on the table for our children and our families, trying to make ends meet, go down there and get some kind of care. I question if it's health or not at times, but you got to be on the wall everywhere you go. You got to call for what's right when it's due. But we ought to be able to do that, and we ought to be able to do that in a sense of shared experiences. And for me, we're tied together. Dr. King said it best. King said no better. We're tied together in a mutual garment of destiny.
Yeah,
he said. And injustice that led us to injustice anywhere is the threat to justice everywhere, right? And it is in that context that we say we're with you and the people of Waterbury, just like I know you are with us here in Hartford, and we are with others across this state when there is some injustice, and in particular, we got a couple of we got a couple of old faithfuls, right? We got a couple of things that we pay attention to that kind of get up in there. You know, you'd be like, okay, let's go. And this police accountability thing, we went on the wall 3 years ago during the in the midst of the pandemic, and went out there on the line and said, hey, we gotta codify law that makes sense in this moment. And this state was a leader in this country around police accountability. And to hear that we still have, and we have outlier officers and police chiefs and mayors who were police chiefs before they were mayor. I'm talking good now. I'm talking real good now. I'm talking real good. All right. There's this established relationship between the chief and police officers that become mayors in some of our towns. I'm gonna get off of it in a minute, but that needs to be said too. There's a relationship that always has been kept very well oiled and very, very familiar. But here we are. We're asking questions, and to my mind, we're deserving of it some answers, and not just to brush off, or not just we're just charging them too much money and they're gonna get tired of it. Right now, that's a bad move. I'm gonna just say that right there. That's not a good move, and we're gonna continue. We're gonna work. The commitment is to work together, so that we get to the end, and we get to an end that makes some sense. And so I appreciate you, brother, for being willing and able to come on and spend some time with us, chopping it up a little bit about this. We promise to continue to have this in the forefront of our minds and hearts, and our prayerful and thoughtful actions as we move forward. There is coming a day. I'm gonna just say it that way. There's coming a day where we might have to move in the ways that we know how to move, but for the purposes of creating some space so that real change can occur. And so, brother, any last word would you say?
No, I just appreciate the time to be in the space tonight to talk about things that matter, things that are of concern not only for us but also for our communities. And as always, it's just a blessing to be in the space with you. You just bring so much value to my life and also to others. And we're so grateful for the work that you and Moral Monday does in this particular state to uplift folk and to bring about justice in a real meaningful way in our state. And so we're so grateful for you.
All right, brother. Well, we appreciate you. We appreciate your words and your kind words. And the promise is to stay on the case and to stay partnered with good folk like yourself. Stay tuned, folks. We ain't done yet. And we're going to get some answers as we move forward. God bless you. And God bless the work that we have in our hands to do. And we are committed to do justice, to live as humble as we know how, and to walk on this world and on this land that God has gifted us with, and that the Native Americans took care of until some people came in here and took it from them. That's a whole nother story. I ain't on that tonight. I'm gonna let that go. Y'all pray for me.
Well, maybe next time we'll talk about this whole parole board and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Now you done gone to meddling, Reverend. I see how you done did that. I see how you did that right there. He done gave us something else we got to dig into the next time we talk. God bless everybody. We'll see you this time again, and on these airways, doing what it is that we do. God bless everybody. Peace.